Hey guys, this is Fred from Pretty Fly Games, and this is episode 10 in how to build an online first-person shooter using Unity and Photon Fusion. In this episode we're going to go through how you can create a ready screen where the player can select a character. We're also going to go through how you can load scenes without losing your network players. To make this video shorter, I've already prepared a scene called Ready. And in this scene I have a setup character canvas, which is this part, which essentially has a few buttons in it. Change head button, change body button, left arm, right arm, and a ready button. And then I have a game start text. This is that text. Game starts in X. And I've already hooked up code for it. So if we look at our setup character canvas, we can see that it has a network object and it has a ready UI handler. And I've assigned the UI parts here, the button ready text, that is this one, and then the countdown text, and that's that one. So let's look at the code for this, and let's open the ready UI handler in Visual Studio. So in our ready UI handler, we can see that it's a network behavior, and we have our buttons, and also I have a boolean is ready, which is false from the start, and then we are clearing the countdown text when it starts, and we don't have anything in the update, and then we have a couple of functions for the buttons, so on, change, character head, etc. And they are only allowed to change the head of the character when a character is not ready, or the player is not ready. So if it is ready, it will just return and stop here. When we are pressing this button, we want the character's head to change. For that to work, we need to look at our character outfit handler, and we need to add a new function to it. So let's just scroll down and see what we have. So we have our replace body parts, and it's being used here. And then we have our RPC request outfit change. So below that, we will add a few new functions to be able to change the head. And we don't want it to be sort of a random head. We want it to cycle in a given order. So let's make a function for that. And it's a public on cycle head, and it doesn't return anything. So what we will do is we will take our outfit, our network outfit, and then we will say that, okay, we know that we already have a prefab head ID, and we'll just plus 1 to it, so plus plus, which adds 1 to it. And then we need to make sure that we are not going beyond the number of outfits we have for the head. So we are checking, okay, if our outfit head prefab ID is larger than head prefabs count, so the list or the array with our head prefabs, -1. So we cannot go beyond the array. So if it is larger than that, we'll set it to 0. And what we'll do after that is that we will call the RPC that we want to change our outfit. So then we do the same thing for the body and our arms. So I'll just paste in the code, which is exactly the same as for the cycled body. So we're doing it the same way, but for the different body parts. Alright, so let's save that and go back into our ready UI handler. Now, when we are pressing the on change character head, we want to call these new functions to cycle the head. And we need to access our own player, because this is the ready UI handler, and it's not aware of which player is actually your local player, the one that you are controlling. So what we will do is we're going to use our network player .local. That's the function we already created before, or not the function. It is the variable that is a static variable that is referencing to our local player. And from that, we are going to use get component, and we are going to call the character outfit handler because that is attached to our local player, and we are going to call the new function on cycle head. And then we do the same thing for our body, and the same thing for our left arm, and right arm. And then we can save that and try it in Unity and see what happens. So now we're starting up and we can see that, okay, we have our FPS mode and we can, well, play the game in FPS mode, but that's sort of not what we want. And we can't reach any of the buttons because the mouse cursor is locked to our aim. So for this specific scene, we need to change a few things. We need to change the camera so it no longer shows us the FPS view. Rather, we want to show the character when we are changing its body parts. Well, we need to be able to reach the menu. So we need to fix those things. So let's stop it. And first, let's fix the problem with the mouse cursor. So we'll go into Character Input Handler. And for now, we are going to remove this code, which locks the cursor, and it doesn't show the cursor. So we will change that and add that into another part of our code. So let's save that. So that fixes the problem that we can't reach the menu. But then we have the other problem with the camera. And the camera is controlled by our network player script. So let's go in there and have a look. So what happens is that when we are spawning, we are disabling our or disabling our main camera, and we are showing our local camera, and then we are showing the local UI. So in this case, we actually want to use our main camera to show our player, and we don't want the local camera to be enabled, and we don't want to show the UI. So we need to determine which scene we are in. If we are in the ready scene, we need to handle this differently than we do it when we are running in the regular FPS scene. So first of all, we need to be able to tell what scene is loaded. So let's use scene management so we can access that. And then when we are coming into our spawn code, we want to augment this. So let's have a look at it, and we want to keep parts of it. So the first thing is we need to determine if we are in this specific scene or not. So let's check that. So we'll create a bool is ready scene, and we are checking is the active scene's name ready. In that case, we are in the ready scene. And if we are in the ready scene, we still want to assign our local because we're going to use that. But we want to do a few more things. So let's just bring our code. There we go. So if it is our ready scene, we want to take our camera's position and change it. So we want to align the camera's position with our transform's position X. So we want it to have the same position in X value as our player. And then we can keep the Y position and the Z position of the camera. So that will cause it to actually look at the player. Then we want to disable our local camera. So let's use that, or do it the same way as we did it when we wanted to enable it. So just take the local camera, game object, set that active to false. And then we want to disable our local UI. So we'll go disable UI for local player, local UI, AI, set active false. And then we want to make sure that our cursor is in the state that we want it to be, which is cursor, lock mode none, and that it's actually visible, so we can make the changes. Right, and then if we are not in this mode, so we'll add an if else statement for that, then we want to move this code that we have here, and let's see where we are. There we go. And we want to just run this code when we are sort of in the FPS mode. And in the end of that code, we need to add our cursor, so it actually is in locked mode and we are not showing the cursor anymore. The RPC set nickname, we will do that in both modes, so it doesn't matter. Let's save this and try it in Unity. So now we can see that we've spawned a character, it's over here, And we were a little bit lucky that it's actually spawned so we can see it, because it's spawning at a random location. So it could be that our camera is actually not aligned with this position. What we want really is that we want the first character to spawn somewhere here, the second to the right or left of it, so that we can get an orderly fashion with all of our characters or all of our players that are going to run this game lined up, so that we can get a nice shot of all of them and see sort of who's ready and who's not. But we were lucky, we can see this character. The camera is not at the perfect position, but that's okay for now. If you don't see the character at all, don't worry. It is because the camera is not aligned. So what you can do is just go in your scene mode and move your camera slightly so that you can see it. Oh, here we go, something like that. And if we look at our player, we can see that it's cool. It has got some glowing eyes. And it could be that your old version doesn't have the glowing eyes, and it's because I've added some post-processing. So you want to have a look at the post-processing prefab in this case, where I've added bloom and some other things to it. But anyways, if we press our change head, and then we can see that we're getting our RPC calls, and it's actually changing our head, and we can cycle the left arm and right arm. So our code that we added is actually working, but we need to make sure that the characters are spawning at the correct locations that we are expecting them to. So let's stop our scene from running, and let's go into network, and let's open our spawner in Visual Studio. So same as before, we need to determine what scene is running. So let's use a Unity Engine scene management, and then we'll go down and check our spawn code. So we have our spawn code that is running here. So we're spawning at a random location. So this is what we need to change. So first of all, let's go in and change or add our variable is ready scene, and we are checking if the scene is the name of it is ready. Then we want to change how the spawn works. So instead of getting a random spawn point here, we're going to assign a variable spawn position, and first of all we're getting our random position. But if it is our ready scene, we want to, whoops, there we go. If it is our ready scene, we want to override this. What we want to do in that case is that we don't want to have a random location, we want to have a fixed location. So we want to know exactly where this character is spawning. So we are going to use our player ID for this, and we're going to spawn it at the position of our player ID. So if we have it like this, we're going to have a spawn position where we are taking the player ID in the X sort of direction times 3 and at the position 1, 0. So they will all line up based on their player ID. But there is a slight issue, and that is that the host has always sort of the largest player ID, and the first player that joins has the smallest. So if we assume that we have a room that is taking in 20 players, it means that the first player and the host will be very far away from each other, so they won't be able to see each other. And we want to make sure that even if there are a few players, all of them can actually see each other. So we're going to move we're going to have slightly different code for the host. So for the host, we're going to take the runner session info max player minus our player ID, and we're going to check, is it 1? If it is 1, then it means we are actually the host. And in that case, we're taking our the same multiplication but minus 1. So it will be sort of on the left side of the first player, and then all of the other players will line up to the right. So when we have changed this, we need to add that to our code here. So let's just replace it. There we go. But for some reason, and I'm not really sure, maybe it's a Photon Fusion bug, maybe it is something with the synchronization of the position, but if we're calling the spawn position here, for some reason often the X value is going to be wrong. It's going to be like half or double the value that you're expecting. So to solve this, I'm just going to force it. After it has spawned, I'm going to force it to actually be at the position that we provided in our spawn code here. So that will ensure that it actually is where we expect it to be. So if we save this now and we take it for another spin in Unity, we can see if it works better. I forgot to mention one tiny little detail, and I've added a network player here. It's at position 0, 1, 0, and I'm just using it to align our camera. So I've changed the position of our main camera to make sure that this character looks good, and all of the other characters will line up on the left or right side of this, and I've rotated the camera 180 degrees to make sure that it's actually looking at the camera or at the character at the correct position, because otherwise we're gonna see the rear end of the character. But for now, let's just disable our network player and let's run our game and wait for it to connect. And now we can see that we have our network player. It is the host. It's at position -3, 1, which is where we expected it to be. We can change our head and body and arms, etc. So if we bring in a client, then we can see our other player here, and we can see that okay, it can change head and body and arms, etc. And it can do some other funny things, like it can actually run around, and it can actually shoot as well, and it can even obviously shoot our player and probably maybe kill it. So this is not sort of a behavior that we want to have in our network or our ready up scene. So we need to make sure that the player can't shoot and move around while changing their outfit. So let's go in and find our character input handler, and open that in Visual Studio. So if we look at our code for it, we are going to find the place where we are sort of checking in the update if we are going to collect any input or not. So we want to as well here check, is the scene the ready scene? And if it is not our ready scene, then we can return. So we're checking, is the scene name ready? If it is, we are returning. We're not collecting any input, we're not sending any input in that case. It's just going to be 0. So that will stop the player from being able to shoot and run around. The next part in our code that we want to improve is the ready UI. So from the ready UI, we want it to actually be able to start the game. So we will do it in a very basic way at first, and then we will enhance it to be slightly more advanced. So first thing is that we are going to check if we are the host or the server. If we are, then we are going to start the game. So we're going to add a function called start game. Nope, start game. Sorry, it auto-corrected into something else. So we need to add that function. So let's just scroll up here after the update, and let's add our start game and fix our code so it looks neat and tidy. Alright, so the first thing we want to do in our start game is that we want to lock the session. So lock the room or session, it's actually a session, so no other clients can join. So that means that nobody can join once the host has decided that we're going to start the game. Then the second part is that we want to load our next scene, which is going to be the world 1. But we're going to use the runner set active scene world 1. This will synchronize the scene with the clients, and it also ensures that the host actually knows that it's in world 1. So that's all good. So let's save that and take it for a spin and see what happens. Alright, so now we load it again, the code still works, and if we hit ready, and we are the host in this case, it changed into world 1, which is nice, but nothing else happened. And the reason for this is if we look at our world, we can see that, hey, it doesn't have any characters in it. It doesn't have our network character. It has a network runner, and our runner is actually running. So if we look at our network runner, we can see that it's running. It has everything is correctly set up. It has an active player 1, but it's not here. So how come is that? And the answer is quite simple. It is because Unity has destroyed our object. When we are loading a new scene, it will destroy all the old objects, and Photon Fusion by default does not recreate them. So we need to make sure that they are recreated here when the world is starting, or we need to make sure that they never get destroyed. So we're going to do it the second way. We're going to make sure that they're not getting destroyed. So the first thing we're going to do to fix this is we're going to make it a little bit easier to grab our player. So let's go into network runner, not the player, network player, and let's tag them with player. We don't have to do this, but it's easier to grab the players. Let's save that, and then let's go into our code for starting our ready UI handler, which starts our game. And before we are starting our game here, let's make sure that the players are not being destroyed. So we're going to grab all the objects with the tag players, and we're going to store it in this array. And then we are going to loop with a for each loop on all the objects. And we are going to call do not destroy on load. And we are marking these objects as do not destroy on load. So after that, they will not be destroyed by Unity when we are loading the new scene. So that's good. But this only happens on the host. So on the host, they will be don't destroy on load. On the clients will get destroyed anyway. But it doesn't matter, because this code will run on the host and will recreate everything and also respawn the clients that are missing. So that's good, because then we can run our regular sort of respawn codes on the clients and be happy with that. So let's save that, and let's try it again. So we can change our head now, and let's hit our ready button, and we can see that, okay, so what happened now? We don't have our player in world 1, but it's on do not destroy. So that's good, and we can run around with the player, but we're not seeing it from the first person view. And as well, the scene is a little bit dark, but that's something with Unity, and it doesn't have then when you build the client, so we can ignore that. But there is this problem that we don't see it from a first person view. So we need to figure out what is wrong with our code and why that doesn't happen. And the reason is quite basic. It is because we have changed our code in our spawning, or actually how the player works. So our network player, if we have a look at this code, we can see that, okay, when we are spawned, we are running this code. And this code is what is being determined if it's going to show, follow the main camera, use the main camera, or if it's going to show this code. But when we are doing it this way, it means that our host is no longer getting respawned, because we have kept him because of do not load or do not destroy on load. So it means that it won't be respawned again. This code will never execute. So we need to make sure that this actually is executed. So what we're going to do is we're going to catch that, and we're going to see that we are actually reacting to that. So we have our on destroy event. Let's add an on enable event, which will be triggered whenever this is activated. And yeah, so we want to be able to react to the scene load event, and we will call a function called onSceneLoaded, right? So let's add some code for that. And first of all, let's just write it to our debug log so we know that it has happened. And we are checking, is the scene not ready? Well, the not ready scene. In that case, we are going to recall our spawn function manually. So we're going to force that to happen anyway. So now that we can save this and try it again, and hopefully it will work better. Alright, so now we are on our FPS mode, and it's working, we're running around, but actually our player is spawning at the same place as it was, because it's, well, not technically getting respawned. So it means that the characters will have the same position as they had in the ready screen, which we don't really want. But otherwise we can run around, we can shoot the other players, and we can do those things. So let's fix our problem with our spawning. So again, let's go into our project, and we will look at our network player. And here we have our code that we added, and we want to add one more thing. And that is, if we have state authority, we want to get our character movement handler and call the request respawn, because that already handles while spawning in the world. So if we want to adapt the code later on, it's easier if we use that for this as well. Alright, so let's save that. Then we're gonna fix one potential bug that can come back and bite us later on. So let's have a look at our character outfit handler. And when the character outfit handler starts up, it's going to call this code, which creates a random character, which is fine. But what happens if this code executes on the client side once it actually has received the sync message from the server? Then it means that it's actually going to have a totally different outfit than what we set up during the ready screen. So let's just make sure that this does not run unless we are in the ready screen. Let's do we can add it up here. And what we're going to do is, if the red screen is not ready, then we're going to return. The next thing we're going to improve in our project is our ready UI handler. So we're going to have a small countdown. So instead of having it start the game instantly when you press on ready, it's going to count down and then start the game. So we want all the clients to be able to see this as well, so we don't want to have it only on the host side. So let's create a byte, a networked byte countdown, and we're going to add a on countdown changed. So a byte, we only need a few digits, so it's going to be like 10 if it's going to be 10 seconds. So that will be fine. So then we need to add our on countdown changed function for this to, not have an error anymore. So let's see where we should add that. So if we have our on ready here, we can add it below that. And we need our static on countdown changed. And then we had the ready UI handler changed. And then we need to call our behavior, just like we have done before. And that should be a private void with the same name. Well, it's easier, at least if it's the same name. So here we can actually act upon the value that we have in this variable. So if the countdown is 0, then we're going to assume that it's actually not started. So we're going to put it to nothing. It's not even going to show. But if it's not 0, then it means that it's actually started and it's counting down. So in that case, we're going to write out the text, game starts in, and then the value of the countdown. And then we're going to add a timer for this. So we will use a tick timer that the host will use to count down this variable. So let's create a tick timer, countdown tick timer, and it starts with none. So when we are pressing our ready, this is where we want to start our timer. But we want to be able to as well cancel the timer. So right now we are going to say that, okay, if is ready, if that is true, oops, not pasting that code, then it's going to be false. So we're flipping the flag. Alright, so if ready is true, then we are going to say that no, actually we're not ready. And if we are ready, and the opposite. Alright, so then we will act upon that. And the first thing that we will do is just to flip this value and say that, okay, if the text is ready, then we'll write out not ready, because that's what the button will do. It will cancel the ready button, and the opposite. All right, and then we are not going to start our game here, but rather we are going to see that, okay, if we are the host, then we want to start the tick timer, but only if we are now ready. So if the state is ready, we're going to say that the countdown timer is a new tick timer that will run on the runner for 10 seconds, and then it will trigger. If not, then we want to set the countdown timer to be none, and the countdown should be 0. So on the clients it will show that it's not starting at all, and as well on the host actually. So that handles the starting and the stopping of the timer, and automatically when the value is changing, this event is gonna get triggered. Right, so here's our dude, and if we now hit our ready button, we'll get our countdown, and if we press that one again, it disappears and we can start again, and it starts from 9. So that's all good. There is, however, one issue, and that is that this ready button only works if you're the host. On the clients right now, it doesn't do anything. So instead we want to change the behavior on this button for the clients, so they can indicate to the host or server that they are ready to launch the game and they're ready with their character selection. So let's go back into our ready UI handler, and if we look at on ready, here we can see that, okay, we're changing the text for the client and the host, but we're not doing anything else. So instead we want to do something on the client, and we want to have a way as well for the server to understand if a client is ready or not. And we could in a manner add another network variable here, but it becomes quite complicated to connect the ready UI handler which character it belongs to. So instead we're gonna actually have this indication on the character outfit handler, and that is already available per character. So what we will add is we have on outfit changed here, and we will add another variable, and we'll do it in a similar fashion. So we will have on is done with character selection changed. So we have a variable called is done with character selection. That flags is a flag that shows if we are ready or not. So let's scroll down and add that to our code. There we go. And we need to as well add our function for that. All right, so now when this code is well, when the change is triggered, we're going to run this code. So from this, we want two things to happen. We want number one is like an indication of checkbox on the character that they are done, and we also want the client to be able to tell the server that okay, we are now ready. We are done with our selection. And as before, whenever we want to change a variable, we need to do it through an RPC. RPC from the client to our host, because a client can't change the variable, so we need to tell the host that we want to do that. So in this case, we are sending a network bool is ready, and we will change the variable to that. And we are only accepting RPC sources is from input authority, and it goes directly to our state authority. Now that we have done that, we want to have a small indication if the client is ready or not. So we will add a UI element for that with a small like a green checkbox on it. So let's add that. Go to our top of our code, and we need to be using as well Unity engine.ui, and we'll have a checkbox for that, and let's add a header as well. So header ready UI, ready checkbox image. So let's scroll down, and as well on this is done with character selection changed. Let's check if we are done with it. If we are, then we are going to set our ready checkbox image to be visible, and if we are not, then we are going to hide it. So that's great. Now the problem is, how do we send our RPC? Because we wanted to trigger it from this ready UI handler, but the RPC call is here. So we're gonna make a public on ready, feed it in with is ready, and then we are checking if we have input authority, and if we do, we are sending the RPC call is ready with the value that we're getting in here. So then we need to call our onReady from our ready UI handler. So let's go down to when our button is ready. So here we go, onReady, and we'll do it in the same way that we have changed our characters, arms, etc. So we will just do a network player local get component character outfit handler onReady and feed in the variable if it's ready or not. Alright, so let's save that and take first spin. But before we try it, we need to make sure that we have assigned our variable for the UI. So we have our ready checkbox image here, and I actually already added a checkbox image that I found in the resources, so it's this one. So that's what we're going to use, and if we save it now, and if we take a first spin, then we can change our head, and we can ready up and be not ready as well. And if we bring in a client, we can see how it works for the client as well. Alright, so here's our little client. He can change his head and become ready, and we can see that above that client we have a ready box. It's a little bit high up maybe, but yeah, it's there at least. And while they're ready, they cannot change. So that works now. And if we hit the red button on the host, we can see that the countdown is started. And as it hits 0, it should start. Yeah. All right. There we go. Now that we've added the ability to set the ready variable on the client, we can also use that in our host when we are starting the game. Because on the host right now, we are starting the game with all the players regardless if they are ready or not. So that's maybe not something we want. In most common cases, we don't want to bring in the clients that have not indicated that they are ready. So What we will do is, when we are looping through all of these and setting them to do not destroy, we can check that, okay, are we actually ready? So we will take the object to transfer, we will get the character outfit handler, and then we will check the is done with character selection. If they are not done, then we are going to kick them. So how we do that is we're going to go to our runner and we're going to use our disconnect function, and we need to provide in the disconnect, we need to provide a player ref, and we can get that from getting the component, the network object, and the input authority, because that is the player ref. So if a client is not ready when this code happens, they will get a disconnect event and will not be able to proceed. Now we're actually ready with our code, but we can add a few more things that makes it more interesting. Let's have that the camera is actually going to zoom out when you're ready. So we're going to add a variable to handle that zoom. So let's have a desired camera position and put it at 0 and 520. So it's going to be 5 high up and 20 in the Z direction. And then in our update function, we are going to use a lerp. So let's use some lerp speed here. And we are going to check if we are not ready. We are going to, hold on, I was adding some code that we were not ready with here. If we're not ready, then we are going to set our desired camera position to wherever our player is. And our player, we already know how to get that. So we're doing this network player.local. So network play.local and transform position.x. So that's if we are ready, and we're lerping very fast when that happens. If we are not ready, if we are ready, then we are going to zoom out the camera to put it sort of in the center of all of the characters, and we're assuming that we have up to 10 characters or 10 network players here at the height 3 and 30. And then we need to as well move our little camera here. And we can add it here. So camera main transform position, and we'll lerp the position to the desired position and make sure that it is frame independent. So let's try that. And here we go. So if we as well have a few clients, oops, not ready. And there we go. We can see that, okay, so they are now here and we can see them. Awesome. Then we can as well, improve a lot of things, but one thing that I received some questions about that I wanted to add is sort of animations. So we want to animate a little bit more here. So let's have a look at our character here, the network player character. And if we look at our animator for it, we have our base layer, our shooting layer. So now we want to add some other things that only happens when we are in the ready up screen. So let's add a new layer and we'll call it ready up maybe. And here we go. And our ready up, it's important that it's not after our shooting layer, because the shooting layer has the flag to set as override. So it will it will override some parts of the animations there. So we'll add it here and we'll set it to additive, so it adds to whatever our base layer is doing. It actually will work with the override as well. And then we'll take our hold on, models and characters and animated our kit here. And when a character is coming in, or when they're getting spawned, let's have them wave. So the first thing that is happening is that they are going to wave. And then as they are readying up, we want them to do something else. So let's add a trigger called ready. And let's have them dance when they are ready. So make a transition there. And the condition is going to be ready. And we can reduce the exit timer so it happens right away. Once we have done that, let's transition back, and we can actually move it over here so it's easier to see. And we don't have to have any specific transition, it will move over there. So the thing is with the layers here is that we only want this to show on a specific scene. So what we can do is use this weight to control that. So if the weight is 0, like it is now, it won't influence the animation at all. If it's 100 or 1, then it's going to fully influence it. So we'll start it at 0, and then we'll change this from the code. So let's go back into our code, and we'll add this specific code to our the same that we had before, our character outfit handler. So in our character outfit handler, we want to be able to access this because, well, this is where we are controlling the state. So let's, after the UI, we're going to bring in our character animator. And when we are starting, we checked, okay, if our network scene is not ready, then we are returning. Then we want to enable our animation layer to show up. So we'll do a character animator, set layer weight, set it to 1, or the layer number is 1, because it was the layer in between. So 0, it starts at 0, 1 is the second one, and 2 is the last one. Enable it to put the weight to 1, and actually we need to make sure that on all other scenes we are putting it to 0, because otherwise it's going to show up on other scenes as well. Alright, so now hopefully when the character shows up, he's going to wave, and then later on when we are ready, we want when our RPC state has changed here, there we go, or variable, sorry, has changed, is done here, then we want to trigger our animation. So what we will do is, if we are done with our character selection here, then we are going to say that we are going to trigger our ready. Okay, so perfect. So let's save that and try it and see what happens. So let's open our prefab and hook up the variable for the animator. Character outfit handler, animator. Let's drag and drop our animator in there. Oh, sorry, it's actually here. All right, so that's perfect. Let's save that and go back and run the game. All right, so we got the little wave when he was ready, and he's dancing whenever he's well, actually he did a bit of both. He did a little dance here and then a wave, because that was what we told it to do, right? Because we have this animation set up. So, but that's fine, that looked cool. So let's fix the bug that we had, and it's in the character outfit handler that is responsible for showing the ready checkbox or ready checkbox image. And it's sort of the same reasons as before. The UI will remain, and it will not sort of get updated, and we need to take that into account. So how do we do that? We need to react to an event here. And we need to make sure that on enabled we are adding our scene loaded just as we did before, and we are checking if the scene name is going to be ready. So let's add that code. Then we need to do something, or if it's not ready. If it's not ready, we want to hide our checkbox, so we don't need the brackets there. There we go. Then we actually have another edge case, and that is that when we have made our character selection and the scene is loaded, then is done with character selection is going to be true, but the clients are going to get recreated, which triggers this again. So we need to safeguard against that and check that if the scene is not the ready scene, then we are going to return, we're not going to run this code. So that should fix our problem. Then we have one tiny thing that we need to add, and it's in the main menu UI handler. Because right now it's starting, when we have this on start new session, it's going to start world 1, and we don't want that. It needs to start the ready scene, ready. I'd like to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters. It helps us with every single contribution that we can get. So please consider supporting us on Patreon. The link is in the description. This concludes this episode, and I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button and the bell to get a notification when the next video is out.